Hi there, Karen Fabian here, founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and we're up to video 7 in the Learn Anatomy Challenge. So in video 7 here, as I look at the PDF, it's entitled Identifying Red Flags While Teaching. So red flags are things that you might see when you're teaching that you definitely want to attempt to correct in your students. And I'm just going to talk about one of them. So there is a term, it's actually a clinical term, that refers to a joint movement, and it's called hyperextension. Hyper meaning too much, extension, hyperextension. And sometimes depending on how the body's positioned, it's easier to leverage the joint versus the muscle in the posture. So an example would be, let's say as I stand on one leg and I come into tree pose, it's obviously a balancing posture and challenging. I can approach it from the perspective of the muscles that help me balance, or I can lock out that standing knee and try to hold myself in the pose by locking out that joint. So that would be an example of hyperextension of the knee in the balancing posture. Now, just to kind of briefly touch on some of the muscles I might want to cue to as a teacher, I might want to cue students to hug the sides of the hips in, thereby contracting the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus that are lateral leg stabilizers, along with the tensor fasciae lata and the IT band, which run down the lateral aspect of the thigh. I might also want them to hug the sides of the waist in to contract the transversus abdominis, to create a little more stability around the midsection in the balance. I might ask them to root down into the standing leg, however, slightly bend the standing knee if you feel the knees locked out. So the ability to cue in that way comes from an understanding of that red flag that might be occurring for some students, and knowing that I can't always see it. It's really a very distinct sensory feeling, somatic experience that the student might have. So that's why sharing it as a, if you're experiencing this, here's something to do, is a good way to approach it, rather than saying, don't do this, because it's really hard to tell sometimes in looking at people, especially with yoga pants, in this case covering the knee, if the knee's hyperextended. So that's one example of a red flag. There are many more. And just in general, the idea is, if you see one of these things happening, give it maybe 1 or 2 attempts to correct the student. And then after that, just move on. Sometimes students are unaware that they're even doing whatever this particular situation is. Maybe they've lost some sensation there in their body, they're maybe distracted, that kind of thing. So in the aggregate, as long as it's something that's not right there in the moment going to create serious injury, just move on and continue on with the sequence. No one really wants to go to class and feel like the teacher is harping on that. However, it's really, really important as a yoga teacher to not only know what some common red flags are, but to anticipate as you're teaching that some of these things may come up. And when they do, when you develop that idea of anticipation of some of these things, you can kind of get ahead of them and suggest through your cues to students, as you're approaching this pose, if you feel this happening, try this. And that's just one of the things that comes with, again, a good understanding of anatomy. So that's it for this video. So we're really running the home stretch now. We've got 2 more left, video 8 and 9. So stay tuned for those.